Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Vijay, what do you mean by that? We'll wait for 2-3 minutes. Then we'll start. I'm waiting for the quorum. Good evening. So we go from 3:40 to 5:40 and then from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. There are two parts left, B and C. What is the conclusion of what from my side? Aditya, I have no idea about that. I'll get that sorted. When will we start art and culture? I'm doing with medieval. Art and culture will be, I think, next Friday or something. I'll tell you 1 second. I have my schedule here. 1 second. Friday, medieval. So till 24th we have medieval. 27th is a holiday. 28th. 29th. 29th. 29th will go into art and culture. Yes, Gulam, I do, but that is part of it. As of right now, I'm doing morning, evening, and weekend. All three batches I'm there. Morning, ancient, medieval, art and culture. Evening batch is also modern day. This is also modern day. Part and parcel. Again, I'm not getting what you're trying to say, Vijay. You have written UNNESSE. So wait 1 more minute. We're reaching that number. Part A is showing live. That can't be. I stopped it on my own, so I know that it would not be live. Completed. It's completed, not live. Well, Saurabh, good to see you also. Okay. So now we go to a very important section, which is economic policies of the Raj. And I'm starting now. Whoever has to join will join later. The question here is very important, which is that 1765 is considered a very important moment in Indian history, which is Diwani rights to the East India Company. In itself, it is considered a watershed moment. You email me Malika Arjun, you email me. You email me with the details, I'll get it sorted. Yes, yes, yes. Jambar Boza, yes. Okay. So 1765 is considered a very important moment to 64-65 because of the Battle of Buxar, the Treaty of Allahabad. Diwani rights is given to the East India Company. Now, the very natural question which comes out of this is that why are we so obsessed with the Abhishek dot Mishra 19 at the rate byju's.com. What I'm saying is that yes, that why is that? Why are we so obsessed with Diwani rights? That how is that the Diwani rights itself is such an important moment? And if I ask you, how did the British loot us? Can anybody tell me how did the British loot us? There's a saying that we were the Sone ki chidiya, which we were, and we were looted by the British. How were we looted? Farmans, trade, taxes, land revenue. So, would it be right to say that they took the land revenue and took it to London? That they extracted that revenue and then took it to London. Would it be right to say that? Which is like directly appropriating all the revenue and then transferring it to London or to the what we call as the mother country. Most of you, 90% of you say yes. Most of you say yes. Used to make roads and railways, drain of wealth. But I'm asking you, how did that drain happen? The question is, how did that drain happen? Which is that, for example, I came to India, I extracted the revenue, I took that revenue and took it to London. That is one way. That is one way. And that is what most of you are agreeing to also, which is industrialization in Britain, war indemnity. Ravi is saying an important thing, commodities. Okay. Now you can add to it if you want to. Deindustrialization, imposing taxes. But taxes were imposed previously also. Then what was the difference? Exploitation of resources, revenue coming out of Bengal, which is that they took that. Railways, but railways is an investment in India. How is it a way of extraction? Destroyed Indian exports by destroying our deep rooted culture, export import trade. The question which you have all are joining right now, I've asked is that how did the British loot us? How did the British loot us? Too much tax, used our revenue for their expenditure. Railway made only for extraction and commodities and services. Now, listen to me. Listen to me. If you ask a person on any random person on the road, or some of you also agree with me on this or agree generally, is that they took that revenue and they took it to London, which is what you're trying to indicate is, in a way, a direct movement of revenue from here to straight to England, and later through the Suez Canal they took it. This is what you're implying. That they extracted revenue from here, they extracted revenue from here, they extracted revenue from here. Too many taxes were being taken. These taxes were then taken to Bombay, Karachi, Calcutta, to Madras, and then they were transferred. And this would mean that there's a direct channel. Why are you fearing saying yes or no? There's no right and wrong answer. You tell me. Can I say that there's a direct channel of transfer between the revenue from India to the English? Yes or no? And the answer which everybody will give is yes. The answer which everybody will give is yes, except for some of you. And unfortunately, The answer is not yes. It's actually no. The grant of Diwani and the looting of India was done in such a nuanced way in so many channels that direct transfer was the rarest of rarest channels. And that is what I have to teach you now. Is that there's a misnomer, there's a saying that the British came, they looted, and they took it to England. I don't expect that from you, but a layman will say the same thing, that they came, they took lot of taxes, they took out everything, and they just put it on a ship and sailed to England. There's a standard thing which everybody will say. And the way India was extracted was so ingenious and smart that for 100 years we were not able to figure out if we were getting actually looted or not, because the looting will start in 1765, and in 1906 the copy of Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, which is Dadabhai Naoroji's book, is going to be published in India. So for close to 100 years nobody was able to figure out what was happening. So now let's try to understand why is that 1765 is such a big deal. What changed in 1765 that I'm not talking about land revenue, I'm not talking about anything right now. I'm talking about the implications of 1765. What does the Diwani rights give the British that they did not have previously? So if everyone's settled down and you are now ready to go embark this new journey with me, can we start our discussion? Because now the discussion is going to be totally different level, different issues altogether. Expansion and all is done. Now we have to go into the mechanics of rule in India. Now see, why is that we consider the 1765 period so important? In the pre-1765 period, now please try to understand world trade at this point of time. England, China, and India existed. And India has pepper, cotton, saltpeter, and other commodities to give. China has two principal commodities, silk and tea. But can English, when they're coming to India or China, sell something to India and China? Commodities which the English can sell to the Indians and the Chinese in, for example, 1750 would be extremely rare. We are self-sufficient subcontinents. India has everything. The English can't sell us anything. China can't sell us anything. So therefore, they don't have any way of exchanging anything in India. Their only way of trading in India is one, which is both to India and China go with gold and silver. We love our gold and we love our silver. You take gold and silver to India and China, and thereafter you give it to the traders or to the people who are exchanging. And in that regard, you take these commodities to England. You take these commodities to England. Now, these commodities, are they perishable or not? Are they perishable or not? They're perishable or not perishable? They're perishable. Most of them are spices. Tea can be consumed. Cotton cloth after a point will start to break or tear, and silk will the same thing. Gold and silver is non-perishable. It can be there for centuries. So they are giving us precious metal, and they are taking things which are consumed by the society. So in a way, it's an unending cycle which the English are going through. Now, if I go into the concept of BOP, balance of payment, or BOT, balance of trade, England would have a negative balance of trade or positive balance of trade or balance of payment. Extremely negative. On the other hand, India and China have positive. That both of them are getting gold and silver, and the English are bleeding gold and silver and basically draining their economy. Now, this is the situation before 1765, before Battle of Buxar. The English are desperate to change this. The English are desperate to change this because this is not sustainable trade. This is not sustainable trade. This cannot be sustained over a long period of time. So therefore, why is that the grant of Diwani is considered important? We understand this system. Anybody has any issue in this? Standard economics, no, nothing very out of the box, straightforward. Positive, positive, negative, BOP, gold and silver. The English cannot sell us anything. The trade is heavily favored towards India and China. Anybody has any issue in this? Cannot sell anything to Asia. Are we clear? No issues? Come on. No issues. Is this Diwani right given to England from the Treaty of Allahabad? It is given to the East India Company. No issues. Okay, very good. Now, what happens post 1765 is you again have the same concept: England, India, and China. Now, in India, they are generating revenue. They generate revenue that is coming from Bengal. Now, according to most of you, there should be a direct line between these two countries. But the irony is not that it did not happen like this. What the East India Company used to do, they used to divide this into two parts. They used to divide into two parts. From the first part, they used to buy commodities buy commodities which they wanted in England and were in demand. And rather than sending this revenue, they used to send these commodities which were acquired by it. These commodities were transferred to the English. Commodities are transferred or exported out towards England. So they had no purpose for this revenue other than buying the commodities. They wanted pepper, they wanted silk, they wanted opium, they wanted a lot of things. So they rather bought these commodities through the revenue which India was generating and transfer the commodities. But because what's the point sending the money first to England and then using that money again to buy commodities, because the demand for commodities will remain. And from the second part of this, they used to buy a very specific commodity buy opium. Opium is a drug, afim, like cocaine. And the Chinese were very strict. They were very strict about their trade policy. And in order to defy the Chinese, who will only accept gold and silver, the British literally started to drug the Chinese. The British smuggled opium and got gold and silver from the smugglers, and that gold and silver is used to buy tea and silk, and then that was transferred to England. And that was transferred to England, tea and silk. This is called the infamous triangular trade. It's called the infamous triangular trade. But if you look at it, is England actually exporting anything out of its economy? Or is England actually sending anything to the Indian or Chinese sector? No. And this is why the Diwani rights were so significant. Now, according to BOP, the BOP of England becomes extremely positive. This becomes extremely negative, and here also it becomes negative. This is the importance of the revenue, which we will see how they were extracting to land revenue settlements. This is the implication of the revenue which they got in India. It was never about the money. It was always about the commodities. This system which existed has now been negated by India. That one revenue which they get in India has now changed the fate of India and England, because England does not need to bleed anything. India is bleeding commodities more than anything. So do you understand the implication of 1765? That it is not a joke that India was giving a revenue to the British. But I hope that now you are better informed in understanding that the channel of the way they looted us, this was the only first thing which happened. Again, understand that previously they bring gold and silver, take commodities. They want commodities because they are in demand in England, they are in demand in Europe. But the question was that how do you acquire these commodities? Where does the money come from? Previously, the money the British gave. This is literally how it is. And a very simple example is, you want to buy something from me and Gokul. Now, previously, you had nothing to sell us. So you used to give me 100 rupees, you used to give 100 rupees to Gokul and used to buy these pens from us. But what happens is that somehow I needed a lot of money and I take a debt from you. I take some debt from you. I take some money from you. Now, basically what is going to happen is that because I owe money to you, which is technically not true for India, I am buying the pens for you and sending it to you. I'm also giving Gokul the money to send that pens to you. So in a way, you are not paying for nothing now. I'm paying for your commodities, which you got from me also. And I'm also paying for the Gokul commodities. The triangular trade destroys the Indian economy in a way that we bleeded commodities, and that is the way drain actually happened. 30 to 35% of all drain was through commodities. So are we clear about what do you mean by triangular trade? So they lured the smugglers to opium and then to gold from them. Yes. So the Chinese were not ready to accept anything. So they will literally drug the Chinese, develop a market for Chinese opium. Chinese smuggler will give them gold and silver, which they will act like nothing happened. They will literally walk like nothing happened. They will be basically taking gold and silver from the Chinese and giving them back and taking commodities from them. British does not pay properly for opium. No, they buy opium at the cheapest rate possible. From where did the East India Company get gold and silver? It was getting previously from the market. They used to buy gold and silver in England. So from British, where did the British get opium? Patna. Bihar opium, Bengal opium was the most important source of all opium in India. If you will, when I will teach you commercialization of agriculture, the first commodity which the British wanted our peasants to produce was opium, so that they can take this afim to China, do clandestine illegal trade, and then act like nothing happened. Imagine that Pakistan, and it does that also. Pakistan wants to trade with India, but India is not ready to trade directly. India says we will only take gold coins. So what the Pakistanis do is that they start to smuggle cocaine into India, and the smugglers give them gold coins. So the gold coins these smugglers are giving is also public money. And they take the gold coins and give it to us and say, now you give us the commodities. So we are draining in two ways. So China was literally drained. So it is not difficult. It is not difficult. It's very straightforward. The British get one set of revenue from here. That revenue could be directly transferred, but that is not what they do. They divide half of this and buy things and send it to Bombay, to Karachi, to Madras, and to Calcutta. And then these commodities are taken to England. And they then take half of it, buy opium in India from the peasants, take it to China, and then from China take the commodities to England. So it is nothing but triangular trade, right? Nothing but triangular trade. England is not sending nothing. Yes, Gaurav. England is not sending nothing. And China is bleeding its own gold and silver through the opium which the British provide to them. And India is losing on all fronts. India is losing commodities also. India is losing opium also. India is losing on everything. Because they coerce the people to sell the opium at a very, very cheap rate. I have not still told you how this revenue is extracted. Why was opium produced? That is a separate story altogether. I am trying to tell you the implication of these Diwani rights. Are we clear? Why are the Diwani rights so important? And how? And if you understand this, then you will actually understand what the British are trying to do. If this is clear, I would now like to tell you how did they extract the revenue out of Bengal. That is what is land revenue settlements. Yes, there is a very large implication for Diwani rights. Diwani rights change the dynamics of India. Indians were simple living people or fools at that time. The channel is so complex that there is no pan-Indian body which can account for this drain. Diwani was given through politics. That is a treacherous concept. Plassey and Buxar was won by the British through internal politics. So that way we were dumb. But very simply, to be very clear, this drain is so nuanced that some of you are making me repeat 3 times to understand it. Think of it that in 2023, when I'm trying to explain it to you, you have multiple questions. Imagine how the English had masked it, that the people who were living at that point of time would have tried to understand this point, that how this is a very complex channel. It's a very nuanced way in which they're taking money. Can I now talk about how this revenue was generated? In a way, yes, but it is even more nuanced than that. What China is doing is called debt imperialism. That is not very nuanced. Everybody knows. Give them so much money that they cannot repay it back. But this is much more interesting. It is masking drain in the form of commodities. And if somebody asks the English, what are you doing? We are just taking commodities. That's it. But that commodities has a very major implication for the English. Now the question remains, how did they extract this revenue? How did they extract this revenue? Can I discuss that? Can I discuss that? Currency used in that time, gold, silver. We were on a silver standard, they were on a gold standard. If anything comes to India, it will come in silver coins. If you want to transact with England, you have to go with gold coins. Okay, now Robert Clive had an opportunity, but that opportunity he did not take. And the East India Company under Robert Clive, if you remember, only took Diwani rights or the Diwani rights or Diwan's position. After the Battle of Buxar under Treaty of Allahabad, they only took the Diwan's position, which makes them the head of the revenue administration. And between 1764 and 1772, in Bengal, there was a certain type of dual administration. It's called dual administration, wherein East India Company is the Diwan, but Nazim's position is with a person called Reza Khan. And he is a Bengali officer. Basically, he was related to the Nawabship. So the headache part, which is general administration, they left it to the locals to manage. And when it came to revenue administration, they took it. So there's dual control. One is English, the second one is the Bengali officers. Now, Clive was from a very important school of thought, which is his policy was very straightforward. His policy is called hands-off policy. He's like, I don't want to change anything. No fundamental change or anything, which is that I don't want to do anything. I just want revenue. Now, Robert Clive is sitting over a land revenue mechanism. The land revenue system pre 1765 is very well managed. You have the state. The state has a very standard revenue demand. That revenue demand is indicated to the Amin, who is a tax assessor. And then you have an Amil, who is the tax collector. Who's a tax collector? So who will meet you first, Amin or Amil? The amine, the amine, the amine will meet you, see how much land you have, figure out what is your tax. He will indicate to you, he will indicate what is the liability. On the other hand, he will be the actual collector. So he will come in the beginning of the season and he will come after post harvest. Now, basically, Robert Clive gets control of this system and he is sitting here. Post 1765, Clive is now the new face of the state. And the Clivian model of revenue extraction is twofold. His concept was appoint European supervisors over the amine and amil, and they will accompany the amine and the amil when they will go to the countryside. Now tell me one thing. Were Mughal institutions and Mughal structures geared for exploitation? Or geared towards exploitation? Resounding no. No Ganesh. No Aditya. The state maximum previously asked how much? 40, 30, 50%. That was the previous demand. That was the previous state demand. But the Amin and the Amil are not there to exploit the people. They are there to extract the revenue, but they're not there to exploit the people. Exploitation is something totally different. So now that European supervisors are sitting, will they have the same type of compassion or understanding as the Amin and the Amil? Again, simply no. So these European supervisors ask for too much revenue, over assessment, and over exploitation. They start to say that give us 80%, give us 90% of the land revenue. And this is going to do two things. Clive, through his model, did two things. First, he indicated to East India Company that I am going to get a lot of revenue. Going to get a lot of revenue. He started to overestimate the demand and expected revenue. And if the East India Company gets a lot of revenue, who benefits out of it? 90% of the total income. If you're producing 100 kgs, they want 90 kgs. Who benefits if the East India Company gets a lot of revenue? The shareholders. Dividend. So profit will be transferred as dividend. Now the point is, if Clive is throughout this period saying, I'm going to get 5 lakh, I will get 5 lakh pounds, I will get 10 lakh pounds, I will get different amounts of money. Now, will the people want to hold the East India Company stock? Obviously, yes. So, with higher expectation, East India Company stock or share price rises from £1 to close to £100. And at the same time, due to overassessment and overexploitation, agriculture will be destroyed, peasants will not be able to give the revenue demand, and now revenue collected is much lower than expected. This will tangentially create the famines of 1769 and 1770. But if I bring both the lower half and the upper part together, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? Very good. Revenue collected was lower. Clive had overestimated. And this is called the Clivian fiscal bubble, which will burst after 1769-1770. You were buying that stock for £100, and the dividend which came was £5. So will I want to hold on to that stock? No. The intended returns did not come, and that in turn led to mass selling of EIC stock, and that will be called the Clivian fiscal bubble. East India Company was now in a crisis. What's called a market crash. Yes. Now, what Clive has done is two things. Robert Clive has created two devastating impacts: collapse of East India Company stock and famines of 1769 and 1770. All because of one simple reason, which is overestimation, overexploitation, and the most important, non-consistency in revenue collected. Everybody is following me till this point? Everybody is following me till this point? Yes? Okay. Now, Robert Clive was asked about it. That who is responsible for this crash and this famine? So Clive said, don't look at me. I am not the one. ये Reza Khan है ना, this Reza Khan is the person responsible. He is so corrupt. He has been doing admissions in such a bad way that it is him that has actually destroyed this economy. So basically, Clive throws Reza Khan under the bus. He says, I always had good intention. I am not the one. It is Reza Khan whose fault this is. And Clive will pin it on Reza Khan. Scapegoated by Clive. That Reza Khan was the reason, remove him. Not me. But now one thing was clear, that Robert Clive's credibility with the court of directors was gone. With the court of directors was gone. So now the British East India Company are in a problematic situation. The East India Company stock has crashed. Famines have become common. And Reza Khan has been removed, but that does not solve the problem. So the Clivian model did not work. One thing was very clear, that the Clivian model did not work. So in 1772, Warren Hastings will be sent by a mandate. Get the revenue sorted and predictable. This is the most important word. Who was Reza Khan? The Nazim, Naib Nazim. What Warren Hastings has been given as a mandate is predictability needs to be there. If there's no predictability, there's no point. Till this point, any issue? Because then I will discuss Warren Hastings model. Anybody has any issue till this point? No issue, sir? Okay, very good. Now, Warren Hastings says that this type of dual administration is not going to work. And the first thing which he does is he dissolves the Diwan and Nazim's position. And now there's only one position, which is initially governor, and then in 1773 it will be changed to Governor General of Bengal. So this division of power, the dual administration, this British way of dividing power was gone. Or rather, the Mughal way of dividing the power was gone. Now he needs to figure out how to take out money without actually having issues. So his system is called the farming out system or the Ijdari system. Ijdari system. What is the difference between governor, governor general? It's a title change. That's it. From, for example, manager, senior manager. That is. Responsibilities change, which I will discuss in constitutional development tomorrow. Farming out system or Ijdari system. And now basically Hastings comes up with an even more dangerous system. He says, remove the Amin, remove the Amil. We don't need these people. And he will now create a position for which you are sitting with me throughout Saturday and Sunday, called the district collector. This word, so these terminology are never exposed to me before this. Obviously, because you've not done ancient medieval art and culture with me. When you will do ancient medieval with me, I will discuss Amin, Amil, Zapti, Desala. The students who have gone through that, they will know. So don't worry, you will be exposed to it. But I hope you're understanding it. Accessor and collector. Doesn't really matter, they've been removed. Now, district collector, this district collector, what you want to become, that literally means what it is. कि क्या बनोगे? कलेक्टर बनेंगे. तो क्या कलेक्टर करेंगे? कलेक्ट्स. द पर्सन हु कलेक्ट्स डिस्ट्रिक्ट रेवेन्यू इज कॉल्ड डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर. That's okay, Srimant. District collector literally means what it is. A person who collects the district revenue. DC. Now, district collector was given a responsibility. Now, tell me one thing. When the Mughals, or in ancient India previously also, when these powers, the state used to extract revenue out of it, did the state own all the property in India? That Mughals owned all the property. Did they own all the property? No. They had the right to collect taxes, but the ownership was always with the zamindar or the peasant. So the ultimate ownership of land was not with the state. But the British somehow mess up Diwani and Zamindari. See, if you are a Zamindar, you own the land. That is totally fine. So Robert Clive was the Zamindar of some area. East India Company was the Zamindar of a certain area. However, Diwani and Zamindari are two different things. Diwani gives you the right of the state to collect taxes. But it does not give you the right to own all the land. Are you getting my point? That there's a difference between Zamindari and Diwani. If I'm a Zamindar, I own my own land. If I'm a Diwan, I collect the revenue of the area which the state needs to get. But the British mess up this concept, and according to the British, the ultimate ownership of all land in India and the right to collect taxes over it was both the same with the British. So under Diwani, they started a notion that all land in Bengal, they ultimately owned. Because what the district collector used to do, the difference between district magistrate and collector is magistrate is related to criminal administration, general administration. He's the part of home department. District collector is always a part of revenue department. District collector, what he used to do, that he had, for example, and his task was that he used to divide all the land under him in a district. He used to divide it into parts A, B, C, D, E. And now it was the task of the district collector to auction the right to collect taxes out of the given land. And what used to happen was that there used to be an advertisement which used to come in the newspaper. There was an advertisement which used to be sent that a land which is 100 acres, we need tax collectors. or people, or rather we'll not say we need tax collectors. We need people who can extract revenue and give it to the district collector. And after a certain point of time, there used to be an auction, Nilami. There used to be an auction where people used to say, X, Y, Z, E, they used to say how much they can extract from this area. For example, X says I can take out 4,000 rupees. Y says I can take out 5,000 rupees. Z says 1,000 rupees. E says 800 rupees. So what the British will do is they will basically give Y, this land will be allocated to Y. Will be allocated to Y. And Y, temporary ownership and revenue collecting rights both have been given. If Y can meet, if he can meet that demand, then this ownership remains. Ownership remains. And if he defaults, then we are back to square one, where again we will go for auction. We will go for auction. And this time X will be said, okay, you said you can give 4,000 rupees. Give us 4,000 rupees. And the irony of the fact was, I could be a beggar in Calcutta. I would just wear a suit boot, reach this auction and say, I can take out 5,000 rupees. And the British would give it. This could be given to anyone. Anyone could take part in auction. This is what is called, the person who gets it is called, this Y will be called Ijdar. Ijdar, that Izzatdar, Ijdar. This is called the farming out system. Now, this is really messed up on multiple levels. But first, you tell me, do you understand this system? District collector divides all the land in his area into certain parts. Those parts are auctioned to the highest bidder. The highest bidder gets the temporary ownership and revenue collecting rights. But if he defaults, he is not able to pay that given revenue, he will be the right will be taken away, the land will be taken away and given to someone else. Are we all clear about this? Come on, you have to be more vocal, you have to be clear, because this is technical stuff. Yes? It's a very messed up seats. The ownership is transferable. That is the point. Now there are three issues in this system. Try to understand it. There are three issues in this system. First, that district collector should not have had the right to transfer this land to someone else. You are literally, according to them, they were creating private property, but this is not private property. Basically, the British, anytime you default, could come and say, this is not your land, give it to someone else. Second, more than that, Lala, if you've met an accident in the hospital, you watch the video later, recorded video, you rest, please. Don't worry. Don't give stress on yourself right now. So no need, I don't need to be here. This is recorded already. So you please rest. The question which I'm saying is, I'll actually make it even more simpler for you. For as an example, imagine there's a landlord A. I'm again repeating, but from a different perspective. and he has 5 flats. I'm a landlord and I own these flats. Now I have to collect revenue. I have to collect rent out of each one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, either I can do it myself, but I'm old, I don't want to do it. So I put out an ad saying that I want 5 flats revenue collected, rent collected by a person. And the more you get out, the more your share will be, in a way. Or I'll give you whoever bids the most, or rather, whoever can extract the most, I will give it to that person. So in the auction, X, Y, Z, and E come. X says that out of these 5 flats, I can take out 10,000 rupees. Y says I can take out 20,000. Z says I can take out 15,000. E says I can take out 8,000. So A says, okay, Y, you have won it. Go and collect 20,000. Now, if Y is not able to take 20,000 out, then he will say to X, you are the next highest bidder. Take out 10,000 out. Now, there's a problem. And I'm identifying the problem for you here itself. This person has a capacity to pay 1,000 rupees. This person can pay 2,000. This person can pay 1,000. He can pay 500 and he can only pay 1,000. What is the highest amount of money which I can get realistically out of this whole rent complex? I can take out 5,500. I can take out 5,500 maximum. Now, in the haste of getting this contract, I said 20,000. So, will in this life, Y ever be able to take out 20,000 out of this? No. So, what he will do is that he will take out 5,500 and then say to the landlord, Nahi mila, I was not able to. So, then they will go to X. X will again go and try to take out money out of these flats. Then X will also not be able to meet it. If you look at it, ultimately, who is getting exploited here? Who is getting exploited here? The renter, which is the people. They only go get the illegal dues which they want and then they say, nahi mila. Now think of it in the rural countryside. District collector says, I give it to the highest bidder. I am a beggar. I go and say to in that auction, I will get 50,000 rupees out of A. The capacity of A is only 10,000. I will go to the peasant, take out 10,000, go to the British and say, kuch nahi mila. So they will say, not a good Indian, and they will give it to the next person. The next person will again go to the peasant and say that was a different person, give us more money. So the cultivator of A will keep on paying dues to people, but basically the British is not letting one person have the ownership. It is rotating amongst the highest bidders, but it is literally destroying the system. And if you look at it, the Ijdari system or the farming out system also does not give predictability. It has no level of predictability. Why? Because in a way, it only is destroying agriculture and highest bidder can be any person. See, in the examination, you don't have to explain this. In the examination, nobody is asking you to make such an elaborate understanding. That is for your understanding. In the examination, you just have to write this basic line. For example, you will write this only. European district collector were to be in charge of revenue collection while the revenue collecting right was farmed out to the highest bidder. The farming system failed to improve the situation and the farmers, which is Ijdaris, tried to extract as much as possible, and that led to a basic burden of demand on the peasant increasing, and this will lead to depopulation and agricultural exploitation. You have to write this much. Will you be able to write whatever has written in the PPT? But do you understand what is the difference between Hastings and Clive, and how farming out system makes no sense in the long run and even is not going to give the British what they want? How to frame answer using all this data? I am not asking you to use this data. What I was written on that slide is not more than 150 words. If you add introduction, conclusion, you get a 250-word answer. Understand this point. Don't start to literally teach the examiner. I have to teach you. You just have to state highest bidder gets revenue right. End of story. You can write that. Simple point is, first understand. Stop thinking about the questions. Think about what you're understanding here. If I ask you to explain this to me, will you be able to explain the farming out system or Isdari system to me? Yes. Can I give you a breather and then we talk about permanent settlement? That is what matters. Permanent Rayatwari, Mahalwari. Can we do that? 100%? Okay. So till this point, it's been an hour, but we didn't get to know. We have understood why 1765 is important. We've understood Clivian model and farming out system. Now, when I come back, I discuss with you the more disastrous system, which is called permanent settlement, then Rayatwari, and then Mahalwari. Can I do that? We take a break here. You have to be more clear. This, you can see now the level of discussion has changed. There are no stories here. It's all about understanding. Okay. So we come back. What is the time right now? It's 50. It's 50. We come back at 5 straight, and thereafter we'll go till 5:40 and cover all these different settlements. Right? Well, Gulam, that is the point. People think that history is all about just learning facts. There are no facts here. Dual from dual administration to Isdari system. That is what we've discussed. Perfect. Fully understood? Great. We come back at 5. Take a breather. Consolidate. Permanent. If you understand Ijdari, or if you understand farming out, you will understand permanent even quicker. So I will see you at 5. Okay, welcome back. Mm, Lala, these sessions are recorded. Yes, they are. Could you send the PDF you sent in the morning? 1 second. Now, can we start again? Some of you are absconding still. Close to 10-15 of you. Okay. So they'll figure out permanent settlement themselves. Let's start. Now, Lord Cornwallis, why call him Lord? Cornwallis is sent to India. This PDF you would have to copy and paste in your URL, then it will happen. It's not a link, it's a pathway. You just copy it, push it in the URL. Now, Cornwallis, in that regard, has been sent to India now so as to replace Hastings, and he has a mandate: bring consistency and predictability in the revenue. We want that revenue should be consistent and it should be predictable, that we should be able to predict how much money we will get, so that we can sell it as a selling point for our shares, and generally we know what we are going to get from India. Now, Cornwallis comes and abolishes the farming out system implementation, and he develops his own understanding, which is called permanent settlement. Even before Cornwallis had come, people were talking about the fact that why can't we just fix the revenue permanently, and the people know how much they have to give. That way there's no confusion, and this year on year assessment or year on year need to go and take it out should be gone. So their aspect was that why can't we just permanently settle the whole thing only. Now the question was who to settle with. So Cornwallis, he is a landlord in England, and he says that let's do one thing. Let the district collector settle with the zamindar, in which ownership and revenue collecting rights are transferred to the zamindar, and it will be job of the zamindar to collect the revenue as specified by the state, in which basically the district collector is to tell the zamindar, we believe that estimated revenue is X, for example. And the zamindar then had to do things. 10/11th of X used to go to the British state, and 1/11th the zamindar could keep. This was 11th. This was his incentive to improve agriculture and increase his share, and this has been fixed, permanently fixed. So for example, if 11,000 is the revenue which the district collector says, 10,000 would go straight to 10,000 would go straight to the British and 1,000 would go straight to the Zamindar. So close to 90% was the revenue demand. 90%. And the logic was that because we are permanently fixing, we will take the maximum possible. Now the question is, why Zamindar? The question is, why Zamindar? Why Zamindar? And the answer to that question is, Cornwallis has a bias towards Zamindars, as he himself is a landlord, and Zamindars are fewer and more powerful. So it was better to ally with them. Now the question which Jaswant is already asking, do Zamindars own all of the land in Bengal? No. But what this is doing is, under this system, under permanent settlement, there are certain clauses. Zamindar is only recognized as landowner. Peasants, farmers automatically lost their customary and historical ownership rights. So in a way, all peasants become landless tenants. There is over assessment, revenue demand too much, 10/11th, and further what happens is, all burden is transferred to the peasant. And for the zamindars, this was equally a dangerous system because of what is called the sunset clause. The sunset law. If zamindar does not give required rent or revenue on a designated day, ownership taken and auctioned to next highest bidder. Now this is why this is called the zamindari system, because zamindari system, it favors the zamindar. It favors the zamindar. But there are fundamentally four major flaws. Firstly, if you are going to say that the land, the zamindar will not say. For example, I have 100 acres If I have 100 acres and they are not asking me how much I can pay. They will say 100 acres you have. We think you can take out 1 lakh rupees out of it. So we want 90,000 back and you can take 10,000. If you increase the productivity level or yield and you are able to extract 1 lakh 20,000, 30,000 is yours. We will permanently only take 90%, which is 90,000. Now, firstly, that land cannot give 1 lakh. That land can only give 50,000. So they have over assessed. Then if the land cannot give anything more, how that 1/11th will be generated is already destroyed. And once the zamindar does not meet that demand, ownership will be taken from him and given to the next person. Peasant as it is not recognized like anything in this. And he is generally considered a tenant in this. And in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, and parts of Northeast and even parts of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, permanent settlement destroyed agriculture. Zamindars became non-zamindars. Peasants as it is started to die. Famine started to happen. And this is why historically, till today, these sectors, Bihar, West Bengal, Orissa, the parts of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, till today reel. Because the worst system of revenue settlement was applied to this area. And it is not that it is going to help the zamindars generally. This area which you see permanent settlement, this whole area was destroyed. They can take 10, 11th or 50,000. No. But the problem is that the British is saying that it is not 50,000. The British is saying you can take out 1 lakh out of it. Now you will not argue with the British. If the land held by different peasants by this system and the land is it doesn't matter if you are not a zamindar, all peasant rights are transferred to zamindars. All zamindars are the land ownership. All ownership of land goes away from peasants. You will basically become a landless tenant. The simple straightforward concept is that it is a district collector is getting a salary. So that is he's an ICS officer. The ICS officer will basically allocate here all land is state land. That is what I said. Ultimate ownership of land is still with the British only. Because the British have the right to confiscate the land out of the zamindar and give it to someone else. District collector will contact zamindars and say to them that this is your demand. It is basically, for example, very simply, for example, I don't care how much you can score in the examination. Whilst giving you mock tests, I say you have to get 90 marks, you have to get 50 marks, you have to get 60 marks. But your capacity at that point of time was not to score more than 40 or 50. And what I do is that I will confiscate your paper and give it to someone else if you don't score those marks. This is called over-assessment. This is called over-assessment. They over-assess everything. And that is a very standard thing the British will do. All across India, they will do the same thing. Over-assessment everywhere. Where is binding part? You said sunset law. Are they given collection? Yes, it is. When the zamindar is given this right, he has to give that revenue on, for example, 18th November at 5 o'clock. If he does not come up with that money on 18th November 5 o'clock, his right will be taken and given to someone else. Only revenue matters. The British don't care about agriculture. Everywhere they destroyed the peasantry and destroyed their lives. So let me read it out to you and it will make sense to you. You see, when the company realized that they were not getting the level of revenue they were expecting and it was also destroying agriculture, there was already a set of officers, for example, Alexander Doe, Perlow, and Philip Francis, Thomas Law, who were talking about this concept of assessment forever. Assess once and forever make it same. Their understanding was that we are giving the incentive to the zamindar to increase assessment. But if my capacity is to eat 5 chapatis and you will give me 10, then how can I manage it? How will the zamindar get 1/11th when the capacity of the land is not to give 10/11th only? So this will be applied to West Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, UP, certain parts of Andhra Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. The concept was it was a landlord-based system. This should be 1/11th, not 1/10th, 1/11th. The landlords would invest money in improving the land, as with the state demand being fixed, the whole benefit, you are emailing me the doubt here. Meshak, write the what is assessment forever. So write it here rather. Assessment forever means that you permanently fix the demand. Stop writing in the doubt section, write it here. Adil Payal, write it here. Now, the company now says that the landlords would invest money in improving the land with the state demand being fixed. The whole of the benefit would be increased production would go to the zamindar while the company gets taxed regularly. The land revenue, since it was going to be fixed perpetuity, which is forever, it was fixed to the absolute maximum. The fixed amount of 10/11th portion of the revenue was given for the government. 1/11th was for the zamindar, and this was even higher than prevailing tax rate. 90% you want. Never in the history of India 90% tax was ever applied. Imagine that the income tax department says today you earn 1 lakh and 90,000 you have to pay to the government. Now, when we talk about permanent settlement, why was it done with zamindars? Because Cornwallis himself was a landed aristocrat from Britain, and because it was easier to collect from a smaller number and they were also powerful, it was better to have the zamindars with you. And when we talk about the impact, peasantries lost everything. Customary rights were ignored, reduced to status of tenant. Huge peasant pressure because the demand itself is huge. And by 1799 and 1812, the zamindars could even confiscate the whatever land they were on and give it to someone else if they basically are not able to pay the rent which the zamindar wants. See, understand one thing, the zamindar is not the cultivator. Zamindar will collect all of this from peasants who have now become tenants. So the tenant is not able to pay, they will take the land also away. And the conditions of zamindars are also not better because of the sunset laws, the zamindars lost most of their land. It is believed 96% of all land was auctioned off because of the fact that zamindars were never able to pay that much demand. Because the assessment, the problem is that in permanent settlement areas, and this is not just true for any other area, it is true for every area in India, there is over assessment. But the zamindari system is very brutal because the peasants and the tenants become equal. Everybody loses their land and zamindar's power. That is why you would have seen that in this whole belt which I've marked as red, zamindars still remain very powerful. Are we clear with regards to what is the permanent settlement? Because then I go to Rayatwari. See, Akash, Jotedar thesis optional level. I'm not going to talk about that. Even if it is mentioned in the NCRT, Jotedars are basically rich peasantry who were able to take the land from the zamindar who was auctioning it. So when zamindars started to very simply lose their under sunset law, these rich peasantry started to take land and they become Jotedars. That's called the Jotedar thesis. How powerful if British can remove you? They can remove you or not remove you. The people who were able to consolidate remained powerful. Basically, small farmers were gone. People with a lot of land were the ones who were powerful. Sir, you are using loyals before Europeans, especially towards those exploiters. It is very inspiring and good to hear those names without those prefixes. But can we use same way of interaction with interview? नहीं, अच्छा, loyal नहीं, lord. You can do that. You can call Cornwallis. That is fine. I read it loyal. No, it's lord. You can call Cornwallis. You can call Bentic. I don't care. They are not lords to me. So that is totally fine. You can also say Cornwallis model, Hastings model. That's fine. Uh, that is how India got some. Yes, that is how India got big zamindars. If you will look at the data of our peasantry, or today, if you look at the farmers' data, most of our peasantry is under the bracket of marginal and small. That is because most of the zamindars which were created during the British period. Zamindar, that is why till today are very, very powerful. Well, some of you may be zamindars holding acres of lands. But that acres of lands was nothing but the British taking peasantry land and giving to you in that way. Can I talk about, is the concept of permanent clear? Is the basic idea clear? And is the system clear? Are these three things clear? Will you be able to write a mains answer in which you will be able to understand why zamindars, what are the shortcomings, and also what is the concept? I'll give you a table and in which I will give you the basic things for prelims. Zamindars exist today. Yes, Gokul, zamindars exist. Zamindars still exist. Why not zamindars? जिसके पास बहुत जमीन है वो जमींदार है. Zamindar. So if you have in your, you may not know it, you may be a zamindar. If in your family you have 5 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres, 2 acres, you are a zamindar only. I will give practice questions, Chinmay. First, concentrate because you need to understand Rayatwari and Mehlwari, and then I can give you a question. I will give you mains answer writing questions. First, learn to understand, then start to write. Can I now talk about Rayatwari? Because the story is still not complete. Okay. Now, Cornwallis is gone. Cornwallis is sent back. He's just literally destroyed this whole sector. And Wellesley has come to India. Is there any additional taxes? That is, illegal cesses would be taken for sure. Wellesley comes to India. What is the difference between peasant and tenant? Peasant owns his own land. Tenants are agricultural labor. Malguzar is basically a tenant. Peasant is a farmer. If you own your own land, you're a peasant. If you don't own your own land, you're a tenant. Wellesley comes to India, and now the question was, Madras presidency was not giving a lot of revenue. So Wellesley says, okay, Cornwallis had this model. He said, apply permanent settlement to Madras presidency. Apply permanent settlement to Madras presidency. But there was a problem. Firstly, there was disillusionment with the effectiveness of permanent. The other thing is that the officers who were appointed in Madras South were people like Thomas Munro, Alexander Reed, and these are Scottish officers. They come from Scotland. They're Scottish officers, part of the United Kingdom, but in a way also fighting against United Kingdom. Scottish officers at this point of time are getting, in a way, influenced by an intellectual movement which is happening in Scotland which is called the Scottish Enlightenment. And in this Scottish Enlightenment, it is believed that the farmer is important, not landlord. Importance is given to farmer, not landlord. So they already hated this concept that rich aristocracy or the landlord should get power. But the biggest issue of applying permanent settlement in Madras was no zamindars as a class. See, in South you have something called polygars, but polygars are basically rich peasantry. Zamindars as a class did not exist. So the problem was that when Wellesley said apply permanent settlement to South, there is no zamindar to go for. And if you go for polygars, you are basically going for big peasantries. Peasants or farmers who could have a very big set of land, but not basically zamindars. They don't have people under them. So the fundamental issue in applying permanent settlement in Madras were three. And therefore, Alexander Reed will come up with a new concept itself. Alexander Reed will come up with this new concept, and it will be Thomas Munro who will apply it. He was the one who conceptualized it. And it is called the Rayatwari system. In this system, very simple, straightforward. The district collector now contacts the Rayat or peasant. Rather than going ownership and revenue rights are given to the Rayat. The district collector indicates the revenue demand. The revenue demand was 50% in dry land, 60% in wetland, and if the peasant agrees, then the Rayat would get a patta. Patta means ownership right. And very simply, you are talking about today, Gaurav, not at that point of time. And if the Rayat does not agree, land is left fallow. Very rare cases. However, there's a clause. If peasant does not meet demand, which is this demand, then land auctioned to next highest bidder. Basically, remove the zamindar and put the Rayat. It becomes Rayatwari system. Difference is this can change anytime. So there's no concept of forever assessment. But district collector now will contact up Rayat. Rayat, if he says yes, then only he gets the revenue rights and the ownership right. He says that I can't meet that much demand, patta will not be given. But the peasants used to take that patta. And once the patta is given, if they don't pay the rent at that point of time, standard story everywhere, take the land, give it to the next person. And if he doesn't agree, land is left fallow. But in principle, does this seem to be a better system? In principle, is this a better system? Why it is lower? Because it could be changed at any point of time. And the revenue of this area was already not too much that they can take 90%. In principle, this is a better system. In principle, this is a better system. Because at least the peasantry is getting it. But there's a problem. Rayatwari has the same issue as permanent settlement. Dry land means that if you don't have access to irrigation, you go into dry land. If you're in a wet area which has a lot of irrigation or near the river, it is wetland. It has the issue of overassessment. And while there were no major intermediaries in the southern sector, a new intermediary emerges. Can anybody tell me what that intermediary is going to be? Guess. I know land can be auctioned, that is a problem. Money lenders. Why? Too much revenue demand. Too much revenue demand. So the Rayatwari system in principle seems to be better. Cornwallis went, Wellesley applies it to Madras Presidency. There is no sizable zamindari class first. Thomas Munro, Mount Stuart Elphinstone, and Alexander Reed all are influenced by Scottish Enlightenment, and they believe that the Rayatwari system is a better system. So it will be Alexander Reed who will come up with it and Thomas Munro will apply it. Now, what is the system itself? What is the system itself? It says that Rayatwari system means Rayat cultivator based. It created individual property rights in land, but it was vested in peasants rather than zamindars. That way, it's better. Land is divided more in Rayatwari or peasant. Obviously, Rayatwari, na, because permanent settlement, there are only few. Here, there are more. In this system, the peasant or the cultivator were regarded as owners of the land. They had ownership rights, could sell, mortgage, or gift land. Annual agreements were made between the government and the cultivator, and if he rejects the choice, the land will be left fallow. But if he agrees, then a patta will be given to him. Now, in practice, applied to Madras, Bombay, Assam, and Coorg sector, the 50 to 60% was asked, and this could change, increase, decrease at any point of time. However, if they failed to pay the tax, they were evicted by the government. And in a way, all the demand was in cash. So therefore, money lenders became a problem in this sector. So while in theory, it seems as a better system because there's attractive, it is for the peasant, it is for land survey based, quality of soil should be taken. But again, the issue is the same. In theory, there is over assessment. See, the simple point is they have over assessment as an issue everywhere. The British are trying to make it work, but they are asking for too much. I'm giving you a salary of 1 lakh and I'm asking you to pay me 3 lakh, 3 lakh a month afterwards. That is not possible. So whilst the Zayatwai system did not fully eliminate village elites, because these village elites will become money lenders. So the peasantry now is reeling under a different problem because by the time, by 1860, policing duties and revenue duties are brought together. There is even more corruption, there is bribery, there is coercion. So the point is that the village magnates, as they're called, the village intermediaries, who were maybe previously not important, have now become even more important. So the point is very straightforward that in the whole of the southern sector, even parts of Sindh and parts of the Burmese sector, Rayatwari system should have been better, but it actually didn't work because of one simple thing: overassessment. And when a peasant is evicted and given his land is taken away from him and given to the other person, what is the ultimate product of this whole process? What is the ultimate product of this whole process? Which is same as the permanent settlement. A landless tenant or peasant. Understand this point. In principle seems better, but isn't. Is it this making sense to you? How Rayatwari is different, but is actually the same. Come on, you have to be more vocal. Result is the same. There it was the zamindar, here it is the peasant. Now, I'll extend it by doing Mahalwari, and then I'll give you a break. I will calculate half an hour from there only. The last system is called Mahalwari. Mahalwari system was applied in the Punjab and northwestern sector, which came to them in the end. Last it came. And basically, Mahalwari system, the British gave up. They were like, we go to the Jamindar, we still destroy agriculture. We go to the peasant, we still destroy agriculture. So we don't want this tension. Let's do one thing. Let's group villages into one mahal. One mahal would be group of villages. And rather than going to each and every village separately, what the British said was that this mahal 1 lakh rupees is the revenue which we can generate. Now, for example, there were 5 villages. So each of the headmen, the chaudhary or the sarpanch of that, if you want to call it, sarpanch or chaudhary of that village, will be told that, see, 5 villages and 1 lakh. So how much becomes each village's demand? 20,000. So he says that each one of you have to give 20,000. And now we leave it to you how you get that 20,000. However, ownership of land is with the peasant. That is why Mahalwari is sometimes called a modified Zamindari Rayatwari system. Now the headmen act like Zamindars and the ownership is with the peasant. Because you tell me, now doesn't the headman have arbitrary level of power when it comes to which peasant will give how much? Because the British have just decided how much that mahal will give. They have just decided how much that mahal will give and basically how much each and every headman has to give. Now, this headman will decide how much each peasantry will give to contribute this 20,000. He can give one, he can favor a peasant and ask him for less. It is irrespective of yield, irrespective of anything. The demand was 66% for 30 years. The British said 1 lakh rupee you generate, 66% we want. For 30 years it is fixed. And the village headmen were indicated, this is your level of money you need to give. The headman is not a patwari. Basically, a headman is chaudhary. In every village you will have that one person whose village headman could not be a zamindar. In your villages, have you seen sarpanch? Have you seen a chaudhary, a person who is the one who basically is the head of the village? Every village there will be a head, and that is called a headman. Mukhiya, yes, mukhiya is the word. Mukhiya. Does every village have a mukhiya? Yes or no? Every village there will be a council, there will be a mukhiya. Forget Panchayati Raj institutions. Even when Panchayati Raj institution is not there, 1% would be the head of the village for sure. And ironically, this is not the first system which they applied in this area. They first went to talukdars. Have you heard of the word talukdar? Taluk means 2-3 districts together. And a person who takes care of taluk is called a talukdar. You would have heard about something called a tehsildar and a talukdar. Tehsildar is a revenue officer. Talukdar is a what we call as general administration officer. Talukdars are basically a head of villages. So the British first went to the villager, to the Talukdar, that you Talukdar give me 50 lakh rupees. But this Talukdar, will he actually ever give the British so much money? Will he ever give the person so much money? No. So the Talukdar started to rebel. So what they said is, remove the Talukdar, straight away go to the headman. So isn't like Mehelwari like British giving up on their endeavor to find the one who should they go to? They're like, we don't care. We want 20,000. Headman, give us 20,000. Ownership is with the peasant. 20,000, how you come up with it, we don't care. First, they do the easiest possible, go to the head of 3 to 4 villages, which is Talukdar. But Talukdar isn't ready to pay them money. So rather they go to the Mahal and say, every headman, this is your demand. We don't care where you get that money from. You do dacoity and give us 20,000. We don't care. 20,000 needs to be there. So the problem is that now if you are a peasant and you are not in the favors of the Mukhiya, you could be asked to pay 50, 500 rupees and someone else 100 rupees. And doesn't the Mukhiya also own his own land? Would the Mukhiya have his own land? Yes or no? He would have his own land. He will not pay anything. He will make everyone else pay. This is called ultimate level of arbitrary absolute power. And the biggest issue in this is one more. The British again overassessed. This village can't give 20,000. There is no way they can give 20,000. So again, the peasant is going to get exploited. But if you look at the location of this Mehelwari, you will realize that the farmers in the Mehelwari sector are better off. Punjab, Haryana and this whole sector, farmers are better off. Because Mehelwari was not that harsh as Rayatwari or even the permanent settlement. Yes, that's the point, Kamba. They are changing the name, but the same exact thing is happening. Overassessment, somebody loses something. This is the best way you can understand it. So I'll read Mehelwari to you. I'll give you a box for its summarization. We'll take this break, evening break. We come back and then start commercialization. Overassessment in all systems. So you see, what is the Mehelwari system? In Mehelwari, the Mehelwari system is applied here. And in a way, isn't this the zone of the most prosperous farmers in India today? If you have any understanding of farming in India. Yes. Why is this that British are so dumb? No, they're not dumb. They're greedy. They don't care where you get the money from. They just want money. Yes, that is the Green Revolutionary also, but they were already better off. Overassessment is there. It's not called dumbness. They are not dumb. They're doing it on purpose. They're not here for peasant welfare. They're doing it on purpose. The one who introduced it is called Holt Mackenzie and will be revived back by Lord William Bentinck, rather William Bentinck. The system was introduced in northwestern Agra, central provinces, Gangetic Valley, Punjab. It had both the elements. The headman can take own action on farmers. Yes. Had both the elements of Zamindari and Rayatwari. In this system, land was divided into mahals and mahal was constituted of one or more villages. Tax was assessed on mahal. Each farmer was given his share. Ownership rights was with the peasant. Revenues was collected by village headmen or village leaders. It introduced the concept of average rent on different soil classes. 66 for 30 years. The system is called modified zamindari because the village headman virtually became a zamindar. So in a way, don't you think it that the headman is acting like a zamindar? Every peasantry in under him is now basically like a tenant to him. So though the land ownership is with the peasant, the village headman becomes a zamindar. That is why this is also going to impact negatively over the next period of time. By over-assessing, they were not giving the shares to zamindars, already not sufficient. Over-assessment is the British greed. They want as much as possible. As much as possible. Now, why was Mehlwari done with village community? Because first they went to the talukdars. The initial short-term settlements were eventually to be made in long run better by Mehlwari. It was based on artificial faulty estimates of the conquered lands, and revenue assessment remained abnormally high. This was a major issue. See, in order to do proper assessment, you need people on the ground, and the British never had the man force to go, or they never had the workforce to go and go to each village, assess it, and come back. That was no way they were never going to do it. Many of the big talukdars resisted the new regime, and they were ruthlessly liquidated by the British. So from talukdars, the British shifted to primary zamindars or village communities. And a detailed field survey was mandated in 1822, but was never done. Settlement was first made with village community or with talukdar if available. Thus, talukdars were not fully eliminated, but wherever it was possible, it was given to the village community. The oppressive nature of talukdars and their need to maximize revenues was seen as a way of protecting the peasantry against talukdars also. The revised system was introduced by R.M. Bird, and it had a potential concept of having assessment of the land also. However, the reason why this is failed is again the same point: confusion, corruption, and virtually impossible to implement. More than that, it was too complex for the existing bureaucracy. And over and above that, the village communities were given very high revenue demand, very high debt demand, and that was in turn going to lead to only one thing, which is over-assessment and destruction. Now, with this, we finish this section, and I want to give you a one table through which you can revise this in one go. Can I do that now? Yes. Do the peasantry keep silent? They have no other option. That is the point, now. They have no other option. Okay, perfect. I hope that you enjoyed this section, because in books it is actually given in a very difficult way, very confusing way. I've tried to mechanically link all of them together, and if you understand them, then you will never have to learn them. That is the beauty of this section. Economic history, if you understand it, you will forever remember it, because these are structures, and as administrators of the of India, you are going to be the future of India vis-a-vis these things. If you can understand it, you will actually never forget it, because these are theoretical areas. Suffering presents at that time, understand they are silent because where do they go? The British will beat them up. This is settlement, permanent, Rayatwari, and Mahalwari. Thereafter, settled with tax rate, originator, impact. Zamindar, Rayat or peasant. Obviously, shares is difficult to recall. You would have to revise. There is nobody who can remember it in one go. Then you have Malwari, villages, groups of villages, Mahal. 90% forever, 50 to 60% anytime change, 66% for 30 years. None of it is applied to princely states. Princely states have their own Andheri, that is their own system. Originator, Cornwallis, Alexander Reed, Alexander Reed, and Thomas Munro. Yes, this is 30 years. And this is Hold Mackenzie. Hold Mackenzie. I'll add one more. Ownership, Zamindar. Ownership, Rayat. Ownership, Rayat. Impact, landless peasantry over assessment. Zamindars also lost. Landless peasantry, moneylenders over assessment. Headmen become zamindars over assessment, and landless peasant. Done. Can you remember this? So the flowchart in UGC book is also. I know, Gulam. I've made it, so I know. I've done it in the same way, so you can use that also for revision. Can we now take a break? Come back at 6:30 and talk about commercialization and other things. Done, done, done. Okay. So we come back at 6. I will stop this session here. You join through part C. Part C. So I hope now you see that I told you there will be modulation. We are in a totally theoretical discussion. So thank you. I will see you at, what is the time? It is already 6. So I have to give you half an hour break now. So I'll give you at 6:30. We come back at 6:30. Note it, 6:30. I have used up your time, so I'm giving you some time back plus 10 minutes. Right? Okay. Perfect. See you. Bye-bye.